Yeah. We're at the Reddit stage. Y'all. I'm so excited to be here with Reddit. We're going to be learning about getting started in cybersecurity. But we are here with Flea. Flea is a big deal, y'all. He has over 20 years of experience leading global information security at top companies around the world. Flea currently oversees the privacy and security teams at Reddit. He is a proud Southerner raised in Mississippi and holds a bachelor's degree in computer engineering from the University of Oklahoma. Absolutely. In his spare time, Flea enjoys rock climbing, snowboarding, mountain biking, road cycling, and powerlifting, and is a passionate Redditor. Y'all, let's absolutely give it up for Flea.
Oh, thank you so much. That is actually such a phenomenal welcome, and I will try to actually live up to that energy. I just full disclosure, I'm super excited to be here. This is one of the most important things I can be doing with my time, and I'm so excited to actually get a chance to interact with all of you. And as I mentioned, I want to interact. And what that means is we have things like polls. I'm here watching the chat. If you have questions, please put it in the Q&A because I do want to actually address those questions. But the key here is that I want to talk with you. I do not want to talk at you. And so let's keep it live here. And also, I do want to actually just give a couple of shout outs to a couple of students who've already reached out to me. So Elijah, if you're in the chat, dude, thank you so much for hitting me up on LinkedIn. Lily, if you are on the chat, thank you so much for actually hitting me up on LinkedIn. I love people from Georgia. I don't know if you're from Georgia, but I know you are at Kennesaw. And also Martha and Jonathan. Thank y'all so much. Let's keep that energy going. Let's keep that interaction going. And let's keep connecting with each other because one of the best ways that we can all make progress is that we are all on the same journey together. Now, having said all that, I want to talk to you about a journey in cybersecurity. So a few things just up front. Hi, my name is Flea. Everybody except for my mama calls me Flea. I'm Reddit's CISO. I've done security at a couple of places. Some of these are places you may have heard of. I did security at a company called Gusto, where a member of ColorStack, Ava, and I actually used to work together. I used to work for a company called Twilio, which actually kind of invented the whole idea of API and developer first platforms, etc. But I've also practiced security at some large, old, stodgy companies like Bank of America, NetSuite, etc. The reality, though, is that none of that actually matters because those companies don't make me who I am, and they won't make you who you are. But they are great ways to actually build and grow a career. So I always like to actually try to start off with a last slide first. And I do that because I don't expect you to pay attention to every single word that I say. Hopefully I will not be boring, but in case I am, I do want you to actually take away these handful of things. Like at a super high level, I always try to remind people that security is actually about identifying, understanding, and mitigating risk. Cybersecurity itself is a massive job market, and it's also a ridiculously great research opportunity, especially for y'all that are actually thinking about pursuing a master's or a PhD, etc. There's so many great ways to actually get into cybersecurity. Fun fact, I got into cybersecurity because I was what we in the security industry refer to as a black cat, meaning that I was on a different side of the law when I first got into security. But there is one great thing about security, and that is that security is actually for everybody. Everybody can actually be a great security practitioner. If you are a developer, you like to actually write software, security is great. Even more so, if you like interacting with people, security is great. And I always want to put a shout out because Reddit is always looking for future great snooze. And if you don't know what a snoo is the little Reddit alien, and it's what we actually refer to ourselves. And I'm looking forward to many of you applying and joining and becoming snooze also. So let's actually get into the realness here. So what is cybersecurity? Fun story, fun fact. The gentleman on this image you actually see in here is a gentleman named John Lee, aka John Threat. He was actually one of the original members of the Masters of Destruction. He is the reason I got into cybersecurity. He was the first Black person that I'd actually seen that was actually doing some really, really innovative things in security, and in particular back when I was coming up. So John Threat and I are actually similar ages. Actually, he's a little bit older, but back when I was a teenager and things like that, he was out there doing some great work. And in particular, John Threat got into security for similar reasons, which was trying to make a more level playing field for Black and brown people by any means necessary. So this is yet another picture of John Threat. We are not both trying to actually grow the same facial hair. That's not a requirement to actually be a hacker, but obviously it helps. But I always want to dispel the myth that cybersecurity is about just being a hacker. It's actually much more than just being a hacker. In fact, what actually really sets cybersecurity apart and why it is actually such a great thing is because it helps businesses understand the risks that they're up against. And when you can understand the risk that you are dealing with, you can actually make choices that other people cannot. For those that actually, some of the people that actually work with me at Square, Augusto, and even some of the people at Twilio, one of my favorite sayings is it is best to be able to do what you want rather than just doing what you can. And when you understand how to manage risk, it allows you to do what you want. An example I like to use, and this is obviously going to date myself, back in the 90s, the whole idea of having your credit card processed online was crazy. It was super insecure. There was no way to actually exchange information on the internet in a fashion that would protect you from hackers and other malicious actors. However, somebody actually recognized the need to develop a secure platform for that. And that's now why we can actually do things such as e-commerce. It's the reason why things like PayPal were invented, the reason why things like eBay were invented, etc. Is this whole idea of actually how do you actually figure out how to actually manage and accelerate things by understanding risk. I am a Silicon Valley kid. What that means is I've worked for a lot of companies that were Y Combinator companies, that were venture capitalist backed. And what that really means is these are all companies that are looking for ways to innovate and disrupt. And one of the best ways to do that is to find ways to deal with risk that other people have not. I worked at a company called Square. It is now called Block. And when I was at Square, we had this crazy idea of allowing people to accept a credit card on some random person's phone. Now, some crazy person that could be in Central Park, that could be in Union Square here in San Francisco, etc. But I can actually give them my credit card and that actually be processed securely. And we were able to do that because we understood how to actually manage the risk there. In this particular case, the risk was around making sure that a mobile device itself was secure, making sure that the person using the mobile device was not actually doing something malicious, and also making sure that the data never was stored on that mobile device. So in the case it was hacked, nothing would ever actually happen to you. That allowed Square to actually do something that nobody else in the entire industry had done, and to this day actually still hasn't done. And those are actually extremely powerful things. I talk about Square, and that's actually a company I think a lot of you know. You think about like Square Cash, the Cash App, etc. Square with some of the Bitcoin stuff. But Square's not the only company. When I was at Bank of America, this was the early 2000s. Bank of America was one of the first banks to actually have online banking. And we were able to do that by understanding and managing that risk. And I always like to emphasize that because that gives a better outline about what it really means to be a cybersecurity professional. That doesn't mean that we don't hack. It just means it's not the only thing that we do. We spend a lot of time also just thinking about, hey, how do we actually protect ourselves from other hackers? And what that means is hiring people like myself or people that had a background like me, or even more so hiring people that maybe did not have a background like me to actually jump in and think about different ways that something could go wrong and then stopping those things before they ever even happen. One way I like to describe to people about what it really means to think about cybersecurity is a lot of thinking about what a Black Mirror episode would be for any product that you're making. Meaning, hey, what would happen if somebody were to abuse this? What would happen if this went wrong? What would happen if this fell into the wrong hands? One of the things we actually spend a lot of time thinking at Reddit is how do we actually make the platform a safe, secure, and trustworthy effort. And we do that by thinking of all the ways that something could go wrong. Now, I talked a little bit about kind of what cybersecurity is at a super high level, but I want to talk to you about why you would even want a career in cybersecurity. There's so many actually great reasons for actually wanting a career in cybersecurity. And also shout out for everybody out there that actually is rocking a natural, because if I could grow hair, I would be rocking a natural also. But one of the things that I think is really useful to know about cybersecurity as a student or somebody earlier in the career is it's a high demand job. Cybersecurity is dramatically understaffed. In fact, it can often take me 9 to 18 months to find one hire. In the Washington, D.C. area, with all the feds, defense contractors, etc., you may not be aware of this, but unemployment for cybersecurity professionals in that area is 0%, meaning that you have your choice of whatever company you actually want to work for, however you actually want to work for that company, and the parameters around that work. I have tons of friends who only do contract work, and some of them only work 6 months out of the year, and they spend the other 6 months just hanging out. Some of them actually live in Thailand, some live in Mexico, some live here in the Bay Area, etc. But it gives you a lot of flexibility. That's one of the kind of like benefits, though. I actually want to talk about things actually a little bit more important to me, and that's the fact that cybersecurity helps shape society. When we can do things securely, then we can actually do more. And when we, especially people that may have come from, marginalized communities, are involved in that, we can actually shape that technology to also be safer for us and also more just for us. And I say that in particular because I live in a state, California, that actually has a lot of things like, traffic cameras, all this digital monitoring, etc. And by having security people involved in those efforts, we can make sure that that information is not used for nefarious reasons. And I don't want to pretend like every single citizen of the United States likes every other citizen of the United States. But I can say that we can build technology to make it such that if you're a marginalized individual, somebody cannot get access to your digital information, that you can't be targeted for certain reasons, that things that actually are developed to help you be more secure are also helpful for us. A classic example of that is things like facial recognition, which previously were not so great, but then some security and privacy practitioners got involved to make sure that facial recognition worked better for people that had brown and black skin tones, and also made it better and easier so that people aren't just saying, hey, Flea looks just like Mike Tyson, so they're the same person. I don't look like Mike Tyson, by the way. But there's some interesting things even just going on in the field today. In particular, the things actually going on with LLMs, large language models, and AI in general. This is one of the most important things that I believe that we as a community can and should be involved in, just because of how many ways it actually can impact us. I think it's actually important for us to even think about our own personal safety. So, I know everybody actually wants a Tesla. Full disclosure, I hate Elon Musk, so I'm not actually going to shout that out too much, but people know what that is. So, it's important that as we're actually getting things more and more online and more connected, there are people there to protect you from malicious actors, but also even people there to actually protect you from potentially malicious governments. I feel really strongly about this idea that security is all about protecting people. I want to make sure that Nazis do not have access to 23andMe data. I want to make sure that you get to keep your money, even if somebody's actually trying to exploit something on the blockchain, etc. That's why this is actually such a great career. It's because you not only get to benefit financially, you get to also benefit intellectually, but I also believe you get to benefit by building a better society. And then probably like the last thing, and super exciting, it's just a lot of fun stuff. If you're working in cybersecurity, you are always getting the opportunity to work on the very latest, the very cutting edge things. This morning, there was a release of the Apple Vision, VR, AR glasses. And it made me immediately think about one of my projects many moons ago with the very first iPhone. The iPhone was brand new. Yes, I am that old to have been there when the iPhone was launched. And I remember I immediately was given one by my company. So my company actually paid for it. It was hard to actually get, just so I could actually just start hacking on it. And it's actually one of those things you actually get access to as a cybersecurity professional that a lot of other people don't get to. And it's an industry and a discipline that is never boring. Um, Fun fact, there's so many different ways to get into cybersecurity that it's actually difficult for me to even tell you what the best route is, although I do have some tips. I can tell you how I got into cybersecurity. I started as a little baby hacker many moons ago. This is late 80s, early 90s, etc. In fact, I spent a good portion of my early teen years and early adult years essentially trying not to get arrested. As I was actually exploring the internet, actually finding things online, what I like to refer to as aggressive curiosity. At that time, there actually wasn't a job you could actually get in cybersecurity unless you worked for the government, which did not align with my political beliefs. And so I spent the majority of my time actually just being a software engineer. I worked on integrated systems. If you've ever actually used a toll road, you may have actually even used some software that I wrote. If you actually did online banking, you may have actually used some software that I wrote, etc. And so I wasn't hired initially to actually be a hacker. I became a hacker because when I was at Bank of America, I ended up hacking Bank of America. I found a way while I was an employee there to essentially give everybody in Bank of America a raise. And so instead of giving everybody a raise, I actually went and told my boss, and assuming that I was actually just going to get fired on the spot, instead of that, they actually decided to actually make a cybersecurity program. And I was actually one of the first engineers in application security, which at the time was actually a new industry. I mentioned that just to show that the path into security is different for every single person, and that you don't have to necessarily have a security degree in order to be in it. So I do want to say that there's so many great ways to actually get into cybersecurity, and it is so lucrative that there's so many reasons for you to think about, consider, and maybe drive towards this path. So how do you actually get started in cybersecurity? Also, shout out that there is not a color stack subreddit, and somebody that color stack needs to make one because I want to see more and more of y'all on Reddit. Uh, when I think about some of those classic paths into cybersecurity, a really simple and easy one is if you're a CS major, even a CS minor. It turns out that a lot of modern software security is literally just writing software. So as I mentioned, some of the things we actually build here at Reddit on the security team is actually software to actually make it easier for other developers to do the right thing by default, so that can avoid tons and tons of security issues. We also build a lot of things to actually make it easier for Redditors to protect their own privacy. We want to be in an environment where if you're on Reddit, you feel 100% confident that the data you put on Reddit is controlled and you are the one in control of that data. And so those are some things we actually focus on there. And it's part of the way that you can get into cybersecurity is actually just being a software developer. Another one, and this actually might be a discipline that some of you aren't familiar with, is this discipline called technical program management. And really what that's about is getting people together and getting them all aligned to actually start working on the same thing. One of the more complicated things you can actually do in technology is get two humans to talk. All the other stuff is actually easy. We all know how to get computers to work, but getting two people that may have different priorities, different beliefs, etc., to actually go is extremely difficult. And this is actually one of those areas, especially if you are a business major where you're already thinking about how to, um, you know, enlighten people about business trade-offs, risk, building out great roadmaps, et cetera. This is actually a great discipline to jump into for cybersecurity. If you are a management information systems major, or MIS or CIS, another great avenue. And obviously CS also can play a role here. I even saw somebody in the chat mention something about GRC, which is the unsung hero of security. This is governance, risk, and compliance. And this is a lot about making sure that your company is following best practices. It's also about making sure that your company is aligned with all of the regulations, both commercial regulations as well as governmental regulations. So things like, maybe some of you have heard about things like GDPR, which is all around privacy. Some of you that use the Pirate Bay may actually be familiar with DMCA takedowns, etc. Those kind of things. So that's actually something that a GRC person can actually help with, and GRC can actually help accelerate companies. One that I think most of you probably are familiar with, especially if you've actually been taking your networking classes, etc., is that straight up just infrastructure and networking. So these are the people that actually help us build the networks that our software is actually shipped on. And as a security professional, it's our job to actually monitor those networks for nefarious activities. In some cases, actually improve those networks so they're more resilient, in particular around things like denial of service attacks or DDoSes for distributed denial of service attacks. Also for things like just classic weird packets coming through the network that actually might take the network down, etc. This is also where you see a lot of security people who maybe have a cloud engineering background come into play. So if you like to play around with things like, GCP or AWS, or even some of you wild kids out there that actually on Azure or maybe even Oracle Cloud, this is actually a great discipline to actually get into. And then finally, another area and another path into cybersecurity is this idea of corporate IT security. This whole idea is like, hey, who is protecting your laptop when you are in your corporation? So if you're here at Reddit, oh, you get a nice little shiny MacBook. Who's the one who's going to make sure that hackers aren't getting onto your MacBook? It's going to be these corporate IT security professionals. They're also the ones that actually help you with things like, you know, like passwords, security, things like multi-factor authentication, for those who'd actually like YubiKeys, etc. They're also the ones that actually help us find and reverse malware when it actually occurs on somebody's endpoint. So I said a lot. And one of the things I was mentioned at the very beginning is I wanted to save a ridiculous amount of time for y'all to actually interact with me. And I am going to actually stop presenting here in a second, just so I can actually jump into the Q&A, because I do want to address some of these questions. But before I actually wrap up with some of that, I did want to, make y'all aware of some of these great subreddits that actually are phenomenal for people that actually want to get into security. Obviously DEF CON is actually a great one. I really like our security engineering, which I think is actually phenomenal. Cybersecurity is actually probably one of our biggest security subreddits, and a good place also for somebody who's actually new to the industry to actually get introduced. And then for those of you that might be thinking about pursuing certifications, etc., r/CISSP is still a great one. So with that said, I think we might even have some time for some questions. So I'm going to actually jump into the Q&A chat here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually start answering some of these questions. So bear with me just a second. I am going to look at my other monitor here. Ooh, and I will go from the top all the way down. So I have a great question here. Oh, and here it is on the screen from Emanuela. How successful is it transitioning to cybersecurity, and what are its benefits career-wise? So because cybersecurity is so understaffed, it's very, very easy for somebody to actually transition from an existing career into it, especially if your existing career is already in technology. But it's actually really easy to even get started as somebody who maybe has zero experience at all. And from a career standpoint, it is actually one of those careers where you can start in cybersecurity and then maybe even end up in another area in a technology organization. One of the things that actually is fascinating is you're seeing people such as myself make that switch. So, for example, if you use GitHub, the GitHub CISO is now GitHub's chief technology officer. And that's actually a demonstration of how broad that remit is for people that actually are practicing security. The same thing actually for Fox Networks, of all things. The lady who is actually the CISO and now the CTO of Fox is a phenomenal human being, even though she actually works at Fox. Another good question here, I think, from Mohammed. What does the cybersecurity interview look like? Cybersecurity interviews are very diverse, but there's actually a couple of things you will normally see. A few classic things is a lot of cybersecurity interviews do want to test your programming skills. Most of that is to get an understanding about how far your development acumen is. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be actually necessarily writing code every day, and oftentimes you may not be writing code at all. But it does give us on the interviewing side an understanding what your baseline is, because a lot of us, especially if you work for a Silicon Valley style company or another big tech company, most of us are spending most of our times interacting with other engineers. And so if we can speak the same language, it makes us much more effective. And that's part of the reason why we emphasize that. The other is that we actually do look for a lot of kind of like cybersecurity fundamentals. There is a great book, and it's actually free online. I'm forgetting the author's name, but the title of the book is just Security Engineering. It is probably the best resource for learning about cybersecurity in every discipline of cybersecurity that is out there. It is a course book at a lot of large major universities, and I highly recommend people actually just going out and Google it. If you do actually have questions later, you can actually hit me up on LinkedIn. Some of you already have, and I will definitely actually send you the resources for that. But it's actually a great way to actually get a baseline about what some of those questions could be. Another great resource that I recommend, especially if you're thinking about cybersecurity interviews, is this thing called OWASP. It is the Open Web Application Security Project. And essentially, it's just a collection of common security vulnerabilities and how to actually learn about those. And you're generally are going to be asked about those during a cybersecurity interview. Okay, so there's another question that I'm trying to actually keep up with all of this. Uh, Whoops. And oh, we have let's see what we actually have here. I am trying to actually scroll through this. Oh, and I see a question here from Miles Zalman. It's like, what cybersecurity projects can we work on to help our resume? Oh my God, I love this question, Miles. So what kind of projects can you actually work on today to actually bolster your cybersecurity resume? A great place for everybody to get started is this thing called bug bounties. There's a couple of companies out there. Some of you actually are probably already familiar with them. My favorite is a company called Bug Crowd. But we here at Reddit actually use a company called HackerOne. And essentially what this is you get to legally be a hacker. And you go to these websites that actually participate in these bug bounty programs, and you get to actually try to hack their website. And if you're successful, then one, you actually get to put that on your resume. You get accolades for it, but even more so, you actually make money. And in fact, I actually have friends that is all they do. They don't do anything else but bug bounties, and that's how they actually fund themselves. That's how they actually maintain their lifestyle. It can be extremely lucrative, but even more so, it is something that interviewers look for, and it makes you stand out if you're just getting into the cybersecurity industry. The other thing to actually think back is actually go back to the thing I actually previously mentioned, which is OWASP. OWASP is always looking for people to contribute to their projects, and being a contributor in an OWASP project is also a great way to stand out for your cybersecurity resume. Oh wait, I have a question here from Lily. So I gotta hop on Lily's question. Lily, first of all, thank you so much. I was so excited to see you reach out to me on LinkedIn. It made my day. Yeah, cybersecurity internships and positions seem hard to find out of college. What are your tips for finding positions early? And so the great tip here is reach out exactly like you did, Lily. Reach out to members of the cybersecurity teams for companies that you might be interested in. The reason that you reach out directly is that often cybersecurity is specialized enough that we are directly looking for our interns. And oftentimes we're actually doing that through people we may have met at a conference or people that we meet at events such as this. The larger intern programs aren't necessarily the best way to find a specific internship in cybersecurity. But if you do reach out, that is probably one of the better ways you actually can do it. And there's also some events and things like that that are actually useful to go to actually even find out about some of those cybersecurity internships. There is a website called Ninja Jobs. Ninja Jobs focus just on cybersecurity, and they actually post internships there. The DEF CON Discord has a lot of people that actually are hiring and that also post internships inside of the DEF CON Discord. And then we're constantly on the lookout. So even if you actually see something on Reddit that's just actually saying like, hey, Reddit's just hiring interns, you should also assume that if a company is hiring interns, they are going to be hiring for cybersecurity. And a really good thing to do is explicitly say that you're interested in joining the security team, because you immediately actually bubble up to the top. Great question, Lily. We have another question here from Armide. And apologies, everybody, if I mispronounce your name. I am the product of Mississippi Public Education. Sorry, Aramid. In your experience, what's the best way to get into cybersecurity? Certifications, degrees, boot camps? Oh, this is actually a great one. I would say in the modern age, probably the strongest thing is actually degrees. I would also say that boot camps probably aren't going to give you as much value as you might think. And then finally, certifications are extremely powerful. They are extremely powerful. So getting a cert like your CompTIA Plus, your CISSP or CISM are all great benefits. When it comes to certification, though, the people that are most interested in seeing you have certifications are kind of like these large corporations or government entities. A lot of Silicon Valley companies don't care. I have 0 security certifications outside of the fact that I'm an old hacker. That's it. So you don't necessarily actually need those, but it can help you stand out. The thing that I always like to remind people of is that it is a trade-off, because you're trading time and some other thing you could be doing to make you stand out to get something like a certification or to do something like a boot camp. I am a firm believer that a degree is always going to be valuable to you. So if you actually have to optimize and have to pick between them, I would say optimize in your degree and look inside of your university, because you definitely have professors that are doing cybersecurity research, and attach yourself to one of those research projects. And the great thing about cybersecurity researchers is that oftentimes, even as an undergrad, you can actually be part of a broader research project. And I would highly recommend that if you do actually have that opportunity. I have a question here from Joseph Dunn. What's the different paths in cybersecurity? So some of the classic different paths in cybersecurity is almost like you've broken into maybe actually like 3 different like domains. One of those domains is just purely software. And that's where this idea of application security comes into play, as well as secure software engineering comes into play. The second bucket I would actually say is just actually infrastructure. And that would actually be the things around like, hey, can you do cloud security? Do you understand what a data center looks like? Do you understand what networking principles are, et cetera? The third, and probably the most under-resourced, but probably the most powerful, the third bucket is actually people. I guess the dirty secret of cybersecurity is that most cybersecurity improvements are not done by cybersecurity professionals. They're actually done by other people in the business via the direction of a cybersecurity professional. So somebody had mentioned GRC earlier, et cetera. That's actually a great place. The whole thing around technical program managers. Even my role as a CISO is actually more about interacting and directing people than it is about me actually putting my hands on the keyboard directly. Oh, I really like this question from Olivier here. Oh, wait, here's another question here from Itielo with Kishi. And sorry for the mispronunciation, but outside of having a career in cybersecurity, how can we keep our information and data safe on a daily basis? I really love this question. Some really simple things. Make sure you have like auto updates on all of your like phones, computers, etc. Companies are really good at actually patching security vulnerabilities these days. And so if you actually have auto updates on, you actually receive many of those things much quicker, and it helps actually prevent you being hacked. You get to actually stay ahead of some of the vulnerabilities there. The other is use a password manager. If you have an Android phone, you already have a password manager built into that. If you use Google Chrome, there's a password manager built into that. If you use an iPhone, you can use Safari's password manager. I'm a huge fan of a third-party password manager called 1Password, and I highly recommend that. That's another great way. And then probably the third is wherever you can, use multi-factor authentication. And then probably finally is be stingy about the information you share. And I say that because the best way for a hacker to actually get access to you is actually know things about you. So if you post everything about your life online, that makes life much easier for a hacker. So just be thoughtful and choosy about some of those things. Yeah, yeah. This was the question from Olivier. What did you learn to prepare for your entry into cybersecurity? So for me, what actually helped me actually prepare for my entry into cybersecurity was learning the scientific method. It seems really, really basic, but there actually is not a lot of deep magic in cybersecurity. What makes a cybersecurity professional really great is somebody who is deeply inquisitive and is willing to actually follow a hypothesis all the way to its conclusion. And that means lots of experimentation. That means trying to reverse something. That means throwing data at a program that may not make sense because you just want to see how the program reacts to it. That's actually what we call fuzzing for those that aren't aware. But the other probably actually things that I spent a lot of time doing to actually prepare for cybersecurity career is actually learning tons and tons of computer fundamentals. And you actually often see a lot of vulnerabilities or software hacks actually being related to somebody misunderstanding a computer fundamental. And you, as a technologist, et cetera, if you can understand that, you will excel in cybersecurity. So examples of that, a lot of people back in my day didn't understand how memory worked inside of a computer. So when they're actually doing allocations in C and C++, they didn't fully understand how the memory stack worked in their computer, which led to things like buffer overflows. And hackers could actually take advantage of that because we as hackers understood fundamentally how the computers work. So the more you can actually understand the core fundamentals of computers, the better you will be as a potential hacker. So, what other questions we have? And I'm trying to also be mindful of the time. I see a great question here from Justin, which is what is the difference between security engineering and cybersecurity? Yes. So, modern days, or at least for people like myself, there isn't really a difference. But you will see distinctions actually called out. So most of the time, you actually think about somebody who's doing security engineering, it really is about building. It's all about like, hey, what can I make that's going to make security better for somebody else? So somebody who invented Face ID, that's security engineering. The people that work on 1Password, that's security engineering. Cybersecurity is often portrayed as people that are trying to find security weaknesses. So people that are hacking, doing penetration testing, doing vulnerability scanning, doing bug bounties. That is sometimes referred to as just cybersecurity. If you have to choose between the two, I would recommend optimizing for pursuing a career in security engineering, meaning you actually want to build inside of security, because I fundamentally believe that that is the future. And over my last couple of decades in the industry, that is what I see as the shift. More and more companies are looking to hire security engineers as opposed to kind of those classic cybersecurity professionals. It's a great question here from Kazim about what role does ethical hacking play in cybersecurity careers, and how can one pursue it as a profession? Yeah, so ethical hacking is actually critical. Think about ethical hacking as almost being like quality assurance for a company in their security programs. So the reason why it's so powerful is that software is complicated and humans are not perfect. And what that means is that we make mistakes. And when you actually can have a cybersecurity professional doing ethical hacking, and for those who aren't aware, ethical hacking means that you are attempting to see if there's something wrong inside of a product or a program, et cetera, without actually breaking the program itself. So, for example, you might say, hey, I think this program might be vulnerable to cross-site scripting. So I would just have a little pop-up that will show up on people's windows when they open, a web browser, as opposed to actually just taking the entire site down. But ethical hacking is powerful because it allows you to actually get that understanding there. In regards to actually getting a career, yeah, I mean, if you can actually get on Bug Bounty, Hall of Fames, et cetera, that is phenomenal for that. Unfortunately, I think I have went way over time. I got a little bit too excited, but I do want to let the rest of y'all know that Reddit is at the career booth. I am also easy to find on LinkedIn, and I thank all of you so much for taking all of this time with me, and also thank all of you for the great questions, and even more so, thank everybody at ColorStack for actually having us here at Reddit. So.
Yay! Thank you so much, Flea. I want to see all the love in the chat as well as all the emojis. I hope you're taking this in. Thank you so much. Boy, I wish I would have known about this hacking stuff before some people took some money on my account this month. But good to know, good to know, good to know, good to know. Okay, work. Awesome. Thank you so much. As we just said, Reddit will be at the career fair, absolutely. So make sure you stop by and say hi. Y'all, we're gonna go ahead and keep it pushing. We're gonna keep it pushing. Y'all ready? Y'all feeling good? Okay, drink some water, move around. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and say let's meet at the CDK stage next to hear from two senior recruiters who will give you the inside scoop on how to nail company interviews and how to interview the company right back. Okay, I will see you at the CDK stage. See you.